Hello, everyone. I think all of you who are in the back, it'd be a great idea if you'd come down closer. All of you in the very back row, come on here. No, that's good because we'll have a more intimate space, and this is not a large audience talk. It's a real privileged space. So without further ado here, while you're all coming in and moving down to the front, I'd like to introduce Gigi Scaria, who is, as Professor Akia mentioned, he is our third speaker in this series. He was born in Kerala. He's been working internationally with residencies in such interesting and far-flung places as Melbourne, Korea, Italy, and he has a very broad practice working in photography, painting, film, and installation. I think that hearing about his practice will be a real inspiration to us. And you will have ample time for question and answer? Yes. Right. So you'll be able to see this other perspective on art compared to what you've seen before and probably what you know already. I want you to give a big hand to Gigi Scaria, who is speaking now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Sorry. Do I have to speak onto one mic or two? I don't know. Yeah? This can be, yeah. Hi. Sorry. Yeah?
You can use this one.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I don't know. I know that you are from the liberal arts background. It's not specifically much in art, but I know that Akia is as you are a teacher, so you probably would know little about art by now, I'm sure. So let me get to the PowerPoint. Well, I do have a different areas of practice. So I trained as a painter. I did study in Jamia Millia for my post-graduation. And ever since then, it was in 95, 98, I passed out from there. And ever since I'm in Delhi, based in Delhi. So my area of interest was basically based on, I don't know, you're all from different parts, probably much of you are very familiar with Delhi. So I kind of came to Delhi when I was 22 years old. And that Delhi was quite different than the Delhi which you see now. That's drastically different and changed in all sense. And many of these artworks which I'm going to show is in a way connected to the change and differences of the city, Delhi. And so I had this exhibition which was in 2007 in a gallery called Palette, which was in Golf Links. That was almost like, it was my first solo exhibition. That is where, so that the title of the show was Absence of an Architect. It was completely based on Delhi as a kind of, protagonist, and how you look at the city and how you deal with different aspects of the living in a place like Delhi. So, this was also the time when, there was this Commonwealth Games were announced. And, I don't know, many of you have remembered that, there was a lot of demolition drive was full swing in force, and they were like, and they talked a lot about the city cleaning up, as well as also there is a map existed, a city map, kind of a core map exists. According to that, the city has to kind of, maintained, and all that debate came in. So, and that was also the time of, even India was kind of open to the liberalized market, where the multinational corporates were coming in and also setting up their own malls and different kinds of business institutions and situations. So this work, what you see here is actually what you see is the Delhi map. And what you see that kind of stream is Yamuna River. And I mean, most of these are like sarcastic comment on, how you keep a city clean. So this is more like, take all the things out and you cleaned your city. So, it works more like a caricature and cartoon style, but this is also done in a proper canvas, directly done drawing with marker pen used, and then later use the acrylic color on top of it in order to keep it permanent. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe the visual is not very clear. This is, so there is a master plan they were talking about. There is a master city plan exists. So this is something about my imagination on how a court could have been looked like, when the master, because, court is something which, you get there and you will be in the labyrinth of the justice and you will never come out of it. So this is kind of an architectural imagination of a courtroom from my side. Something like this. And Delhi is also a city which has got a lot of historical importance, and probably you trace back the history of the time of Pandavas, when the time of the epic Mahabharata. I mean, there is no evidence to that, but still people do think that Indraprastha was Delhi. And till then there are so many invaders came and so many cities were made in the city and demolished. I mean, they lost it almost all the time, and there were kind of layers of history which exist in the city. You can only see it if you actually look for it, and you can't. There is no evidence on the when you look at you don't see much of that layer of history and the architectural situations. I mean, unless and until you really look for it. So I was here thinking about the site, the excavated site which Delhi has. And these are like master plan of a residential area. And I don't know how many of you draw directly. Do you paint or draw? Do you do some practice, art practice? Okay, yeah. So these, many of these drawings are done spontaneously, directly onto the canvas, and starting off from one side, and slowly you draw and you build. It's not like you have a proper sketch in place and then you trace it into a larger canvas. It's just like you start from one side, and then you follow with that. It's pretty much that is the way most of the Indian cities are also made. So we never had a planned city ever, unless it comes to 1940s when the Lutyens Delhi was created by the British, and of course the Chandigarh, which was then Le Corbusier was invited to make that city, especially by Jawaharlal Nehru. So other than that, we probably don't have many planned cities. Our city formations are very different. So that is the reason that when we even get into a planned city space, we don't know how to move or react or act in a city space, which, if you go to Europe or America and other places, they have a certain vision and certain way in which, you navigate or move around in a city. Whereas for us, it's like, we don't even have anything like, even a traffic signal, we don't care, because this is our lifestyle is very different. So, and this one, many of these are like, it's more like, I can talk about them, that you can also see as more like an artwork. And city within is also, you can see many cities in a bigger apartment has got smaller cities, which is also in a way saying that, you have multiple cities occupied in the larger outline of a broader city like Delhi, because you can have many social lives, many existence, and you don't have to learn a particular language to live in a city like Delhi. Delhi can be a kind of a microcosm of the whole India, and you have ghettos of all kinds, and you can live without even speaking Hindi. You could live in the city forever, for example. And also, the foreigners who come here see, like your teacher, who could speak Hindi very well, on the other hand. So this is, some of that diversity aspect is very interesting about our city. And this is another work. In which I was kind of doing, in a way, you see the bulldozer which actually take these things off. At the same time, you imagine that, because bulldozer also has a structure and a hierarchy, and it also protects some people when the moment you demolish others. So it's in a way, it has its own build-up mechanism in which you kind of thrash someone and you move on building on the other side. So this in a way represented by this image, where you have the flat and apartment has become a bulldozer on the other hand. So it's a kind of a two-in-one. And I've also made many of these two sculptures and other forms as well. So that will come later. This is called Delhi Mall. Here what you see is the many monuments like Jantar Mandir, Humayun Tomb, Qutub Minar, all put together to make Delhi Mall. And there was also a set of photographs were exhibited in the same show, and this actually was titled Absence of an Architect. What you see is the old city shot from the minaret of Jama Masjid. And some of the photographs are also taken from the metro stations, because that time when metro was first introduced to the city, and then you see when you travel by a cycle rickshaw or an auto rickshaw or a taxi or in the bus, so you see different perspectives of a city, as and when because of the way you are sitting, your positions are changing. So when the metro introduced, most of the metros was on the flyovers and high skylines. So you could actually see a different city altogether, because you've never thought Delhi would look like this from the higher perspective. So this was, one of these places called Pulbangash, a place where there was this colonial building which now uses more like a school. But my interest was, many of these places, if you click, and you can even say, you can't exactly locate and say that where it is taken from. It could be Delhi, it could be completely different place. It could be Bombay, it could be even outside India, any place. So there is, in one sense, many of these architectural forms actually loses your identity, geographical locations connected to a city. So that was quite interesting for me to observe, that you really can't pinpoint many of these places. Where is it actually? This is another photograph, but what you see is the reflection of the staircase, back side of a staircase. It's a steel, this thing, and the person who is sitting there is sitting on the corner down. So it's a reflection of a person. I was talking about these different layers of the city, and this is, I don't know, many of you are familiar with Haley Road. There is this Agrescens Bavli, which is close to Connaught Circus. And what I did was I was kind of stepping in each step on that stepwell and clicking photographs. So this was not photoshopped or anything, it's a direct photograph. So what happened? Sorry, I didn't do anything.
One is working.
Oh, one is working, yeah. Okay. Since you're sitting there, it's more closer to you, yeah. So this, it's like, I was clicking from each step. And since it also has depth as well as distance, so you could actually create, you could see the city, the new city coming up in the Barakamba line. That is what. So it's an old and the new. So it's a kind of taking one over the other kind of a situation I was trying to depict in that particular one. These are also, this is a photograph where you see a construction site, which is quite a normal site in Delhi or anywhere else. It's, you can see all over this way. When you come to your university, you see that a lot of construction sites. So this was specifically focused on the people, those who are living, those who are doing the constructions, have their own, place where then it actually temporary spaces when they shift from one place to another. And I actually made it more like, you can't see it from these photographs that, the detail of it. It actually a dubbed, it's an extended version of a single image. And for one portion, you could see the people were in that frame. Then the next side, I've removed people from it. So you are actually seeing a kind of, half fill and half empty site. Well, this is another set of works which I did during a residency program in Korea. It was titled Triviality of Everyday Existence. So I was there in a residency program, and I was there for almost 5-6 months. So mainly the set of photographs and video I made in that time when I was spending. So the interesting fact was this was in 2007, okay? And we were not that equipped with mobile phones those days. But when what I could see there, it was a kind of very normal scene in people are using mobile phones. But that too, they were very advanced even in that time. They were not even sending SMS or talking to people. They were actually watching their own television serials and channels in these personal mobile sets. So it was like, then obviously this is a staged photograph. I actually invited some of the students and people, those who are interested in my project, they kind of staged it for me. Otherwise also you could, shoot something like this in Seoul. It was quite simple. So my interest was that, but now I don't know whether that is relevant at all, that those days, when you look at mobile phones and their own personal, whatever they are seeing, and that person is sitting next to you in a metro while you are traveling. So, where the private and public kind of, debate ends, because how close you are from a very personal space, even you are sitting in a public space. So that was kind of an interesting, thing for me. So that's the reason I made this set of images. So it goes on like this. So, same set of people, I asked them to, pose. And, I kind of selected some of the metro lines and areas, then I took them around. Yeah, okay. It's not me. It was not me. So these are also old public telephone booths, You could see the design and how different they look. This was another set of photographs where, as I was telling earlier, that you can't actually locate where this photograph is being taken. So it could be even some remote place in Texas, for example, some part of anywhere in the world. But this is specifically, it was in an island in Korea. Something like this. So they also have a lot of these. Exercise machines all along the riverfront, also on the seaside, because they are very, they take care of their body very, very well. Very, they eat less and all. You don't see any fat Koreans anywhere in the world. No, some of these are like, this is the kind of a Vespa, that Bajaj scooter, which resembles, many connections we make when you see, even though they will be far removed from us, the kind of culture and thing, but there are connectivity, there are also the colors of the chair, which is, very close to somewhat, South Asian kind of aesthetics. Of course, this you won't get to see in this part of the world, and the way the parking is done. And this was this is the slogan which you see in many of these tourist cars, and their high soul of Asia. Okay, moving to the next section. If you remember that I had made a painting of the bulldozer, so I've also made a sculpture based on that. So this is made in wood, and mirror glasses and things like this was made in 2-3 portions and put it together. How big? Sorry, did you ask something? No. It's quite big. It's about 7 feet long and about 6-7 feet high. Yeah.
It's like life size, no? It's the real one. It's the size of the real one.
Yeah. No, not that big as the size of the real one, but yeah.
How much time will it take?
Well, 2-3 months take. This is another, and what I do that I also make these sculptures. Then I take it around different locations and place them there and take photographs. Then the photographs and the sculpture will be part of the exhibition. So this is a horse. So if you know the story of Trojan horse, do you? Any of you? Yeah. And Troy movie you probably might have seen as well. So that, but I'm just taking that Trojan horse into another context here, and this is also in connection with Trojan horse is like. That's also a symbol of betrayal or taking over. In this case, it is probably a land mafias or builders are taking over the rural land, expanding the urban spaces. That was kind of an idea behind this work. And this was made in wood. It's also it's about 10 feet height and about 8 feet long, and made in parts and assembled it in different parts of the city and took photographs and almost the peripheries of the city. So you can see the scale. This is the real size and color. I actually made the photographs black and white when I exhibited. So it's to give it more like an archival touch to it. It's as if it has been there for a long time. This is another one, which is it's also a electric post as well as apartment complex. But then the site where it is placed is a real site. So that site actually triggered me. That actually gave me inspirations to make something like this, because I was passing through that area. Then I saw this. There are a lot of poles. There is no electricity. It was actually meant to be for the electricity. So it's almost looked like a vast land with a lot of poles, like an installation, big artwork. So then I kind of, made this and brought it over and put it there and took photograph. This is a street light. Then, since I was kind of engaged more into the city and the different aspects of the city, then I was also, the second show after the absence of an architect, I made another show, an exhibition, where I titled the show Amusement Park. So for me, titling Amusement Park was more about extending the absence of an architect, idea further, thinking that, if you think about the urban space as an amusement park. The whole thing is an amusement park. This is actually an image from a video still. So I'll play that video a little later. So you will see that this was all actually made based on from the real photograph. Then I also worked on it, and there are 3D animations were used in order to work. It's actually it moves. The whole city moves, and I'll show you the clipping of it later. This was another work. It's a Ferris wheel. It's also big scale. Then instead of this baskets, there are buildings which are hanging, and it also has it has also motor connect. Placed it, and this was the daily version. So these are some of the paintings I have done. Also similar themes about the city and kind of suffocation which we feel when you live in a space like Delhi in one sense. This was actually, this was long ago in 2010, we had gone for a field trip to Kashmir, and the show was titled Snow. So I was kind of reflecting on, we were all asked to work on the idea of Kashmir. So this was kind of my work on that. It's basically, it marks out the territories where it's always been in dispute. And it also talks about the mainland, how these two are kind of, just opposite. In a way, we are kind of protected and walled towards the other side, and the rest is all like empty, and we actually have no clue what's going on there. This is called Teddy Mandir. It is actually modeled on Akshardham temple, and what you see here is that there are a lot of television screens which actually built up to make the temple, and this is all done in Photoshop. But what I did was I was going through all these different religious channels those days, and clicking photographs from people sitting and talking. So all that put together, it's about 250 or 300 images put together to make the Akshardham temple, and which also in a way talking about religion and spirituality in the digital era, how it is taking place, and what people normally don't go to temples, and they used to sit in front of the television even maybe 10 years ago. Now I don't know what they do. They are more high tech now. So this was a version even before that. It was done in 2009. It's another work. I don't know whether you're familiar with this sculpture. Yeah. Oh, wow. So what I did was that I kind of reversed the followers of Gandhi. So at one first instant you won't see the difference, and now you see here because and then asking who deviated first. Basically, how we deviate from the paths of the old man, and it's basic unstick about what's going on in the country. Also another, also based on Gandhi theme, this what you see, that house is the Sabarmati Ashram, which is placed underneath the flyover. So in a way, it's also seeing that you're passing over things which is probably relevant once upon a time, and you don't care anymore. This is, in fact, this was this area where the Raja Rajuri Garden, the, ring road site, when the metro was under construction. So each time when I passed through that area, I used to stop there and click photographs. So I also have an image where it actually closes, completely. So then I used that, so it's a single image of that, and then obviously these buildings were took from another photograph, which was from Shanghai, and placed on top of it in order to make this one. So in a way, it also says about, because we have this lot of debates on India, the aspirations of India become China, or Mumbai becomes Shanghai kind of situation. So then we don't know exactly whether are we equipped enough, or do we have the infrastructure in order to even think about in that line. So that is why I'm putting this together in order to think in real terms. It's also the similar kind. So one side you see Shanghai, the other side you see Delhi. Equator in one sense, equating as well, Are you getting bored? No. Slightly? No. I mean, this is something which I did on the Yamuna bank. It was part of the project. I hope you have seen Ravi Agarwal was here last time. So he curated a show in connection with the water and the Yamuna river and the site and all. So I was invited to do something on the site of Yamuna. So this was there for almost 10-15 days. So what I did was that I created this fountain where I was drawing water from Yamuna, and it goes through this, and it kind of it shoots out back to the river. So this is the night image. So you can see that's almost like 70 feet height. This was shooting it, and the structure was also almost like 2-story building, about 24 feet height. So my idea was to bring people close to the river and see what is its condition right now. And mostly in cities, a fountain is used in order to hang out, people to hang out place, and also to have close conversations and also enjoy in general sense. You're saying something? No. So this was like bringing people to see the real plight of the water which is running through this fountain in order to know what is the condition. So we normally don't even look at the river, and we don't even know Yamuna exists in Delhi. So we mostly use it as more like a sewage. So this was the idea. This was work I did was shown in Venice Biennale in 2011. So it's a little detailed. I mean, I have to explain it what exactly it is. It's an installation. It's a real elevator. It's slightly larger than the normal elevator size, and maybe 8-10 people could easily stand in. So what happens when you go in and when you click the button and the elevator opens and you go inside, and you have these 3 side walls which are backlit projections. So and you are just going in and you are seeing this, and backlit projections with moving images. So when you see inside, so you see that there are interiors of the houses you see inside, and slowly the image moves down. So you feel like you're going up to different floors. So first when you enter in, you are in a parking lot. Then slowly you are going up into different floors in order to see different interiors of different houses. And all these houses have, mostly, different economic background and, situation. So you kind of see a kind of disparity between different layers of social strata in this, when you go through the elevator. So you can see people, you just really get the feel of you're moving up. So I mean, you can't escape the feeling because all the three sides are blocked. And it's a kind of a real elevator feeling you get. And what happens that you go to the top level, and again it goes further up. Then you see the whole city, and then it goes down. It's like almost like a fall, and you go to the parking lot again. Then it goes further down to the underground, and then you see that very like single room houses, like very tiny ones. Then it goes further down to a dark space, and it's stuck there, and it comes up again to the parking lot. Then the elevator automatically opens its door. But in between of this ride, if anyone wants to get out, they can easily switch open the door and go out, because you also can get dizzy at times. And it's quite a suffocating experience as well. and it's a 10 minutes ride. Maybe I think I'll stop here and I'll show some of the videos. So, one second. Yeah. This is another set of images work which I did. Purely photographic. It was called Dust. It was a show I did in Melbourne, Ian Porter University, and inspired by a residency program in Melbourne I had. Then I had to come back. Then I worked on these, and what I did was that I went to Kutch and JSLH and these 2-3 places in desert land in India. And it was quite interesting that I was kind of equating this Australia and India in one sense. That was the kind of understanding I was working on. So when I exhibited these works there, then the Australians thought it was some part of Australia, and they could never relate these escapes with India at all. Because India, we do have a stereotyped version of India, which is always a colorful and this and that and nothing else. So no one knew that we do have salt lake desert like this. So this is little run of Kutch. And these are on the way to, in some parts of Gujarat, where the metals are being, stones are being crushed. This is the salt lake. It's pure salt, and you could walk on it endlessly. Yeah.
Could you explain the name of Divided by Accident?
Oh yeah, that was, most of these titles are actually in order to, it's just a landscape, but just to give a little more dimension to the landscapes. Divided by Accident, I was talking about the horizon. Okay, yeah, so it's equally up and down. So it's divided by accident. But so that's my own, shadow. And it's on the sand dunes. This was a completely different project, which was done in Kochi Musiris Binale. I don't know whether you know about this international show happens in Kerala every 2 years. This is the third edition, which is now running there till the end of March. So I was participating in that in 2014. So this is a huge big bell I created. It's a steel, it's made in steel. And I don't know whether you get the details here. It has a lot of holes, and it actually pumps water outside. It's just almost like a fountain in this case also. It actually draws water from this port shore. And the idea of this bell is normally understood as the kind of structure of time. When you represent time, bell comes in. Other than the religious aspects of it, it's also time. If you can think about time in a mode or in a kind of sculptural form, bell comes in first. So using bell and also piercing it, and water coming out of the bell was more about piercing the time, according to me, a kind of puncturing the time was the idea behind it. It's like very, it's quite, what to say, it's not a normal level of, thinking about things, but sometimes you can have these very abstract ideas in a very concrete structure. You try to do that. That is what I was trying to do here. Because it's steel, it's quite big. It's about 13 feet high, and the whole thing was about 5 ton weight. It also was a huge task. It was made in Coimbatore and transported by road to Kochi, where it was installed.
Is it permanently there?
It was part of the show there. Then it actually then moved to another city in Kerala only, and permanently it is there. So this was after 6 months. Again, I went to the site because when you get to see when the time gets gone out, looking at the time back. Can show some video works now. Okay. You have to imagine this as more like it's a wrapped image. So I am showing it as a single straight image. So when you see, this is the elevator I was talking about. This is what you see inside the elevator. But you have to imagine it's more like a, in 3D. It's actually not syncing with the, it's a little heavy file. This jerk happens because of the file heaviness here. Even though these are still images, I have also animated them a bit using a little, giving it more life. It's not happening that easily here because the sound is not singing because of the slow. You see, like the tube light which flickers and I think I'll show something else because it's not working. Another work. It's called Prisms of Perception. it's something in loop. It's slightly changes the atmosphere and it goes again like this. Slowly. So the idea for something like this was about when we think about how the perceptions are developed, and we always think that something like a slogan, "Incredible India." When it was introduced, it was all about the kind of development is happening in this part of the world, but at the same time, you don't know from which angle you look at the development. Based on that, you see a different picture altogether. So that was my idea of, because as you see, these different frames are different prisms through which you look, and probably a rural person who stands in the rural part of India would see, 60. 60 is the bogie of a train in comparison to an urbaner who is sitting somewhere else. So it's always there is a trouble understanding that something which we think that generally we all should understood the way it is. So there is always a difference in which the perspective is forming when you look at things. That was something which I was trying to do in this video. This is titled Political Realism. Yeah, well, it actually talks about
Which software you use for that?
After Effects animation program, and also the stop motion, still images.
Stop motion
Yeah,
and the
stop motion images, because
You can have Q&A.
it's okay. Yeah, so it's a it is taken. It's like a single this thing, and moving the doors a bit by bit and clicking it, and then it was animated using the other images taken from different. Obviously, the idea behind was that thinking about this regime shift for the probably last 30 years, what has happened in the political history in the world. So how that all happens or experienced by a person who sits in anywhere else in the world. So that's why it happens in a very home front. It's in a household. That's where it all kind of orchestrated. It's more like you're kind of seeing the whole trauma happening all over. So it is more like a set in that sense. So it also kind of, I could have made so many more references of different part of the history, but it's also about thinking about how the time passes, and by sending the train at the end, it goes on. It's not something which is never stops, and it's if I make something like now, then it will add up many other events which has happened in the recent past. So that is the work. Basically, it goes on like that, and it goes for anti-clockwise, and then it reverses the anti-clockwise, and slowly it starts stop. This was the one which I was talking about. Even though the images are like the 3D animations and flash animation and everything is used, but the real photographs are used in order to make the work, and the one side which you see is the real side, which is it's close to Rohini, Netaji Subhash metro station. From there, the other things are added from different parts, and it all skinned using the real photographs of different parts of baby. That is how it was made. And I was just trying to show something called Alex, let me see if that opens, then I will. This was shot from the minaret of Jama Masjid, as I was telling you earlier. Then this was animated. This was done in flash animation, which was long ago, and that's the reason you don't get that complete grip on it, but it also has its own charm. And the idea behind this particular one was that it's also about it talks about city getting panic, because that area, all that areas were under threat or demolition those days. So in one sense, you think about, I was using this musical thing in order to say it's not just about anything to do with Western music. It's about the conductor's role in music, where you kind of stand a little far and you kind of conduct something which it's the role of a conductor in a way saying that you can move, pull, and you have a higher pedestal on which you orchestrate. So that actually affects a lot of people or even a civilization in the other context. So this was the idea, using this mixing these two elements. It's not anything to do with Western music as such. It is about the conductor's role. So, but at the same time, it could be seen as a musical video, which city kind of dance according to the music. So that is how this was kind of visualized. There is a lot I can show, I can talk about, but I think I should stop now. And if you have some questions, and we could engage in. conversation. Thank you very much.
That's all in the end, but guys, any question, any things that you want to ask from technical question to a general one?
Yes, please.
So, why did you choose to just go into this field? And did you have any perception about it? Or
Yeah. No, I was interested in art from the childhood. So that was the only thing which I could do, and I was good at. So I was not very good at studies in general, since I was an average student. So my interest was always on art, and I was, even during the school days when I come back home, then straight away sit with the clay or all kinds of things, and so that was my area. That was the interest. Then later, of course, something like this you see, it actually builds over a period of time. And also, just being interested in art will not make you an artist. Obviously, then you also have certain focus and certain way in which you look at things, and then you also have to know how you can present that out. Because there are so many ways in which you can explain or show one particular idea. So that's the reason, I was trained as a painter. So I had to move on to different mediums in order to make meaning to what I really want to express. So sometimes it may not happen through the painting as a medium. So every medium has its own limitation. So you kind of move on to something else in order to explain it better. This is how it is.
Did you ever face criticism for your choice of work?
Pardon?
Any of the works? Did you ever face criticism on any of them?
Criticism, mostly people appreciate. Criticism happens as well. Depending upon this, criticism comes much more of a larger context in which because all these are specialized areas. So when it is more looked professionally with the artist circle, the viewers are different.
Because a lot of your work includes a lot of social messages
Yes.
and awareness. So many times, you run into issues with builders, maybe like one of your work talks about demolition.
No, but that's a tragedy of our country, that people are not very seriously taking art. So maybe some hooligans in here and there will always think if you make some religious images, if you kind of touch upon them, then they get agitated. Otherwise, people are not even bothered. So.
Good evening, my name is Anushka, and so I was wondering whether you have a background in architecture, because there's clearly a lot of themes of the colors, for example, in the earlier bulldozer and such as speaks of architecture to me. So what is your relation to that field?
Yeah, in fact, I don't have any direct link or connection to architecture, but I was fascinated and interested in the subject architecture, and from a very probably in two levels. One is the visual as well as philosophical context. So there are two elements of architecture I was interested in, and architecture is also something which actually creates people to move and act, and there are also architecture defines certain social behaviors as well. So these are the things which I was quite interested in. But otherwise I had no training in architecture. This is a very pure choice of looking at the city that was the interest.
Thank you.
Sir, a lot of your paintings and your work reflects the city life in Delhi. So, what are your views on how Delhi as a city is continuing to grow industrially, starting to become a more globalized city? Has that affected your work in any way?
No, it actually affects and changes according to the way we see the city. Because till now, we can't actually call Delhi as a metro in the so-called understanding about a metro city. But Delhi has a very interesting. It's a very you have this contrasting notion of a place. Like maybe Bombay has a much more different feel, because Bombay people even when they come and they look at Delhi, they can't stay in Delhi for more than maybe 2 or 3 days. They kind of, because the city is very harsh according to them, and city is widespread, and you can't do more than one thing a day. If you have a meeting, you have only one meeting one day. You can't do two meetings in a place like Delhi. So the understanding about the space dynamics is quite different. And then you see that the way in which we coexist, the way we behave in our own cities, and the way how we treat the fellow pedestrians or whoever, the taxi driver or the cycle rickshaw puller. So all these are maybe very different if you go to, there are places, for example, New York, if you go, and it can also be a rough city at times, in terms of, because of the nature in which, people move and, communicate. But, Delhi has a very, very different rhythm, and it has a kind of a stark contrasting nature in its content. So when you see that is changing, that obviously that reflects what we are doing as well. But definitely that will reflect some, for the coming times, if at all it happens.
Hi, so my name is Veer. I enjoyed your talk. I was just kind of wondering, I feel like we have a lot of information about, the lives of, other artists like actors and directors, and sort of we have a lot of information about the lifestyle that they lead, but I'm actually curious to know about what is the lifestyle of artists in India? Like, is it still like a very exclusive type of group, or what is the general art scene like in India?
I don't know, it actually changed drastically probably for the last 15-20 years. This used to be something else where artists normally don't have money. Okay, they always suffer and kind of struggle. Artists go through, not any other people. But what happened during the 2000 onwards, 2004, 5, and there was an art boom. There was a market for art, and people started getting interest to buy art. Then that actually changed the whole scenario of art for some time. And many artists have also made some money. Then their lifestyle got changed. Everything happened. But then that was all in a very short span of time. Then now it is again everything goes back to the basic. So people, those who have had a very nice lifestyle are all kind of shortage of money, and also to living standard then again goes back. Because art is a commodity. If someone wants to buy art, that will be the last option. Or people who have plenty of money will actually buy a piece of work of art. And also in our country, if we have to invest in something, and we always think not what you're buying, you always think the product, what are you investing, you probably don't even look at it, what it is. So our nature of understanding art is quite different. No one buy an expensive artwork and put it on the wall for some time. They actually keep it somewhere, and they will look at the artist's prices, whether it goes in the auction price, up and down. They will sell it in the next lot. So the way we even see the art and also understand, also hold it is very different. So therefore, artist is more or less the same, probably 20 years ago. There is a slight improvement or development in their overall, but still, art is not a mainstream business actually. If you look at cinema, look at music, and look at theatre, all that has got much more audience as well. This has become a very small unit where only the interested people are in it. Otherwise, you don't have much reach with the art. This is how I see it.
It's very encouraging.
Hello sir, my name is Prithvi here.
Pardon, yeah.
Hi. What you showed us was really interesting. I really enjoyed your talk. Okay, so the kind of work you showed us is very unique. So how did you decide upon doing this medium of artwork, or how did you get introduced to it?
No, that's what, this definitely has a journey. It's not just happened at one point of time. Obviously, I was also equally interested in filmmaking, cinema, and sculpture, even though I was trained as a painter. So, but all these interests, either you keep it with you, or you probably try tried to work that out in different contexts. In my case, I was fortunate enough to try that out other than I was doing painting. So that is how I kind of got into it. I mean, it is all self-learned in one sense, other than painting. Painting also, obviously, I studied for about 6 years, a bachelor's degree and master's degree in 2 different universities. But simultaneously, I was also into other practices, which was, my own persuasion.